The Stranger in the Static. The first time Ethan Reeve heard the voice, it came from an old boxy television set in the corner of a dusty pawn shop. He hadn't even planned to go inside. He'd just been walking home, trying to shake the gnawing anxiety that had plagued him since waking up that morning. But something about the flickering neon sign that read "Treasures of the Forgotten" had pulled him in. The shop smelled like mildew and regret, and the aisles were cramped with relics of lives left behind. Tarnished jewelry, cracked porcelain dolls, stacks of yellowed paperbacks. Ethan's attention drifted to the television. It was an old CRT model, its screen alive with gray static. No power cord was visible, but the static buzzed and shifted as if alive. And then, amidst the white noise, a voice emerged. "Ethan," it said, low and deliberate. "You're being watched." Ethan froze, his breath hitching. He glanced over his shoulder, but the shop was empty save for the shopkeeper, an elderly man who appeared to be napping behind the counter. The voice spoke again, clearer this time. "Don't turn around." Against all reason, Ethan obeyed. His pulse thundered in his ears as he stared at the screen. The static rippled, forming faint shapes. Faces, perhaps, or something worse. "They've been watching you for a long time," the voice continued. It was neither male nor female, but something in between, cold and detached. "You must leave now." Ethan's legs felt rooted to the ground. "Who are you?" he whispered. The static twisted violently, and the voice replied with a cryptic warning. "Run before they see you." A sharp crack rang out like a gunshot, and the television went dark. The shop's dim lighting seemed to falter, and a suffocating silence settled over the room. Ethan stumbled back, his heart pounding, and bolted for the door. That night, Ethan's apartment felt colder than usual. The hum of the refrigerator and the occasional groan of the pipes offered little comfort. He couldn't shake the unease from earlier. He tried to convince himself that he'd imagined it, that the voice was a trick of a stressed mind. But then he noticed the shadow. It lingered at the edge of his vision, just beyond the hallway's dim light. At first he thought it was a trick of the flickering bulb, but when he turned to face it, the shadow darted out of sight. "Hello?" he called, his voice trembling. The only response was the low creak of the floorboards. He grabbed a kitchen knife and stepped cautiously into the hallway. The air was heavy, suffused with the metallic scent of something long dead. A cold draft whispered against his skin. Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket, shattering the tense silence. He fumbled for it and saw an unknown number on the screen. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Ethan," the voice from the television said, "you didn't run far enough." The line went dead. Sleep was impossible. Ethan spent the night with every light in his apartment turned on, clutching the knife as he sat on the couch. When dawn finally broke, he felt no relief, just a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. As he sipped his coffee, a knock came at the door. It was soft, almost polite, but it made his blood run cold. He set the mug down, gripping the knife tighter, and approached the peephole. A man stood on the other side. He wore a black suit that looked decades out of fashion, his pale face gaunt and expressionless. His eyes were obscured by round, opaque glasses, and his hands hung limply at his sides. "Mr. Reeve," the man said, his voice muffled through the door. "May I come in?" Ethan backed away, his pulse racing. "Who are you?" "A friend," the man replied. "We need to talk." "I'm calling the police," Ethan said, though his trembling hands made no move for his phone. The man tilted his head, as if amused. "They can't help you. Not with this." Ethan's instinct screamed at him to run, but before he could act, the man spoke again. "Open the door, Ethan. You don't have a choice." And against his will, his hand moved to the lock. The door creaked open, and the man stepped inside, bringing with him an unnatural chill. Up close, His skin looked almost translucent, the veins beneath it dark and spider-like. He smiled, revealing teeth too sharp to be human. "Who are you?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The man ignored the question, surveying the room with a detached curiosity. Finally, he turned to Ethan. "You've seen something you weren't meant to," he said, "and now they're coming for you." "Who?" The man's smile widened. "The Forgotten. Shadows of a world that once was. They've been watching you for a long time, Ethan, and now they've marked you." Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. "What do they want?" The man reached into his coat and pulled out a small black box. "This can keep them at bay," he said, holding it out. "But it comes at a price." "What kind of price?" Ethan asked, his hands trembling as he reached for the box. The man's opaque glasses glinted in the light. "You'll know when the time comes." Before Ethan could respond, the man vanished, leaving only the box and an overwhelming sense of dread. Ethan clutched the box, his knuckles white. The whispers around him grew louder, urging him to surrender, to let go of the pain. He closed his eyes, his mind racing. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words like daggers in his throat. "I can't forget her." The keeper tilted its head as if considering his response. Then, to Ethan's surprise, it stepped aside, gesturing toward an archway that had appeared in the far wall. "You have chosen well," it said. "The maze respects strength of will. Go, and face what lies ahead." Ethan didn't wait for further explanation. He sprinted through the archway, the whispers fading behind him. But as he emerged into the next realm, a chilling thought struck him. The maze hadn't asked for his sister's memory. It had taken something else, something he might not realize was missing until it was too late. The price of protection. Ethan woke to the sound of his television blaring static. Though he'd unplugged it the night before, the box sat on the coffee table, its hum growing louder, almost like it was alive. He hesitated before picking it up again. The smooth surface now warm to the touch. The shadows were gone, but the air in his apartment felt oppressive, as though the walls were closing in. He needed answers. The man in the suit, if he could find him again, might be the only one who could explain what was happening. He tucked the box into his backpack and left the apartment, the feeling of being watched gnawing at him every step of the way. The city was awake now, its streets bustling with people. But to Ethan, it all felt distant, like watching a film through a dirty lens. His destination was clear: the pawnshop. If the television had started this nightmare, maybe it held the key to ending it. The neon sign buzzed faintly as Ethan approached. Treasures of the Forgotten looked even more derelict in the daylight. He pushed open the door, the bell above it jingling weakly. The shopkeeper, the elderly man from before, was seated behind the counter. His milky eyes tracked Ethan as he entered. "Back so soon?" the man rasped, his voice like dry leaves. Ethan placed the box on the counter. "What is this?" he demanded. The shopkeeper's expression darkened. "You should have left it alone." "I didn't ask for this," Ethan snapped. "That man, he said it would protect me. From the Forgotten," the shopkeeper finished. "You're in deeper than you realize, boy." Ethan's grip tightened on the edge of the counter. "Then tell me how to stop it." The shopkeeper leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "There's no stopping it. The Forgotten don't bargain. That box, it's not protection. It's a beacon." Ethan staggered back, his mind racing. Beacon?" Ethan's heart sank as the shopkeeper's words echoed in his mind. "A beacon? What does that mean?" he asked, his voice cracking. The shopkeeper's clouded eyes seemed to pierce through him. "It means you've invited them in. Wherever you go, they'll follow. The box doesn't protect you. It guides them to you." Ethan's chest tightened, and a sharp pang of nausea swept through him. He looked at the smooth black box on the counter, its faint hum now sounding like a sinister laugh. "Why would that man give this to me then? He said it would keep them away." The shopkeeper chuckled bitterly. "That man wasn't trying to help you. He works for them. He's their harbinger. He gave you the box to ensure they could never lose track of you." The realization hit Ethan like a freight train. Then how do I stop it? How do I get rid of the box? The shopkeeper's expression turned grave. "You can't. The box is bound to you now. The only way to end this is to face them. But I warn you, once you step into their world, there's no coming back." Ethan gripped the box, its once cold surface now searing hot against his skin. The shopkeeper scribbled something on a scrap of paper and slid it across the counter. It was an address, handwritten in jagged, shaky letters. "Go here," the shopkeeper said. "It's a gateway, but be prepared. The forgotten don't play fair." Ethan hesitated. "What do you mean by gateway? Where does it lead?" The shopkeeper didn't answer immediately. He turned his attention to the ancient television in the corner, its screen flickering to life despite being unplugged. The static formed jagged, shadowy shapes that seemed to watch Ethan. "It leads to their domain," the shopkeeper said finally. "If you want answers, that's where you'll find them. But you better know the rules." "Rules?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The shopkeeper nodded. "They're not like us. They don't perceive time or space the way we do. If you stray from the path, if you speak their true names, if you look too long into their eyes..." He trailed off, his expression haunted. "Let's just say the box will be the least of your worries." Ethan left the pawn shop with the address clutched tightly in his hand, his mind a storm of fear and uncertainty. The world around him felt increasingly distorted, the faces of strangers on the street twisting into grotesque masks when he looked too long. Shadows moved independently of their sources, darting and writhing like living creatures. He reached the address just as the sun began to set. It was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, its windows shattered and its walls covered in graffiti. A faint, low-frequency hum emanated from within, identical to the one coming from the box. Ethan took a deep breath, steeling himself, and stepped inside. The air was cold and thick, each breath feeling like a struggle. The interior was vast and empty, save for a circle etched into the concrete floor. Symbols surrounded the circle, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. As Ethan approached, the box in his hand began to vibrate violently, the hum growing louder until it drowned out all other sound. He knelt at the edge of the circle, unsure of what to do, when the voice returned. "Place the box in the center," it commanded, the tone colder than before. Ethan hesitated, but eventually obeyed, placing the box in the circle's center. As soon as he stepped back, the symbols flared brighter, and the air grew heavier, almost unbreathable. The box began to twist and contort, its smooth surface folding inward until it formed a jagged black void. From the void, a figure emerged. It was neither man nor beast, its form shifting and pulsating like liquid shadow. Its eyes, or where its eyes should have been, glowed faintly, the only constant feature on its amorphous body. "Ethan Reeve," it intoned, its voice resonating deep within his bones. "You've come to the threshold." "What do you want from me?" Ethan demanded, his fear barely masked by his anger. The entity tilted its shifting head. "What we have always wanted, to reclaim what was lost." "I don't understand," Ethan said, taking a cautious step back. "You will," the entity replied. "Step through the void, and all will be revealed." Ethan's instincts screamed at him to run, but the shopkeeper's words echoed in his mind. "If you want answers, that's where you'll find them." Summoning every ounce of courage he had, Ethan stepped into the circle, the void swallowing him whole. The transition was immediate and disorienting. Ethan found himself standing on a vast, barren plain under a sky that was neither day nor night, filled with swirling gray clouds and streaks of crimson lightning. The air was electric, humming with a frequency that set his teeth on edge. In the distance, structures loomed, monolithic towers of black stone that defied geometry, twisting and bending in impossible ways. The ground beneath his feet pulsed faintly, as if alive. The entity from the void appeared beside him, its form now more stable but no less alien. "Welcome to the Forgotten Realm," it said. "You are the first human to step here in centuries." Ethan looked around, his fear mounting. Why me? Why have I been dragged into this? The entity's glowing eyes bore into him. "Because you are a key. Your existence bridges two worlds, and through you, we shall reclaim what was taken." Before Ethan could respond, the ground trembled, and the shadows around them began to move, coalescing into shapes that resembled the creatures from his nightmares. The Forgotten had arrived. Ethan clenched his fists, his determination hardening. Whatever this realm held, he wasn't going down without a fight. Ethan stood frozen as the creatures emerged from the shadows, their forms more grotesque and alien than he could have imagined. They moved with an unnerving fluidity, their elongated limbs bending at impossible angles. Their eyes, if they could be called that, were voids of shimmering darkness, drawing him in like black holes. The entity beside him remained unbothered. "Do not look too long," it warned. "They will see more than you intend." Ethan tore his gaze away, focusing instead on the surreal landscape. The crimson lightning above illuminated a distant path winding through the barren plain. It led to a massive structure on the horizon, a fortress-like maze that pulsed faintly with a dark energy. "What is that?" Ethan asked. "The Nexus," the entity replied. "It holds the answers you seek, but to reach it, you must navigate the maze of whispers. Few survive." Ethan's stomach churned. "I don't have a choice, do I?" The entity's form rippled, as if laughing silently. "No, but know this, the maze feeds on your fears. It will twist your thoughts and memories against you. Stay focused, or you will be lost." The path to the maze was treacherous, the ground shifting beneath Ethan's feet like quicksand. The shadows followed him, keeping their distance, but never straying far. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the air itself resisted his movement. When he finally reached the entrance, the maze towered over him, its walls constructed from a black, glass-like material that reflected distorted images of his face. Whispers emanated from within, faint but insistent, like 1,000 voices murmuring secrets just out of reach. "Do not listen to them," the entity warned, its voice echoing in Ethan's mind. "They lie." Ethan took a deep breath and stepped inside. The moment he crossed the threshold, the whispers grew louder, wrapping around him like tendrils of smoke. The walls seemed to close in, the narrow passage twisting and turning in ways that defied logic. As Ethan navigated the maze, the whispers began to take shape, forming words and sentences that sent chills down his spine. "You failed her. It should have been you. They were right to leave you." He shook his head, trying to block out the voices, but they burrowed into his mind, dragging memories to the surface. He saw flashes of his sister's face, pale and lifeless, the aftermath of the car accident that had haunted him for years. He heard the accusations of his parents, their grief turning to blame. "It wasn't my fault," he muttered, his voice trembling. "Wasn't it?" the maze replied, the whispers converging into a single mocking voice. Ethan stumbled forward, his hands pressed against his ears. The walls of the maze seemed to ripple, the reflective surfaces now showing scenes from his past. He saw himself sitting alone in his apartment, drowning in regret and isolation. He saw the pawnshop, the moment he first touched the curse box. And he saw the man in the suit, his sharp-toothed smile, promising protection that was anything but. "You can still turn back," the voice taunted. "Give yourself to us, and the pain will end." "No," Ethan growled, his anger cutting through the fear. "I'm not giving up." After what felt like hours of wandering, Ethan reached a central chamber. The walls here were higher, curving inward to form a dome. At the center of the room stood a figure unlike any he had seen before. It was humanoid in shape, but unnaturally tall and gaunt. Its body cloaked in tattered, shadowy fabric that seemed to writhe on its own. Its face was hidden beneath a hood, but when it spoke, its voice was a harmony of whispers. "You have come far, Ethan Reeve. Few make it this deep." Ethan tightened his grip on the black box, which had begun to vibrate again. "Who are you?" "I am the Keeper," it replied. "The maze is my domain. To pass, you must answer a question." Ethan's pulse quickened. "What kind of question?" The Keeper raised a bony hand, and the walls of the chamber shimmered, displaying a fragmented image of Ethan's sister. She smiled faintly, her eyes filled with sadness. "Would you sacrifice her to save yourself?" the Keeper asked. Ethan staggered back, his mind reeling. "What kind of question is that? She's already gone." "Her memory lives within you," the Keeper said. "Sacrifice it, and you will pass. Refuse, and you will remain here, consumed by the maze." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. The thought of losing the last piece of his sister, the memories that kept her alive in his heart, was unbearable, but the alternative, being trapped here forever, was equally horrifying. "Make your choice," the Keeper urged, its voice cold and unyielding. Ethan clutched the box, his knuckles white. The whispers around him grew louder, urging him to surrender, to let go of the pain. He closed his eyes, his mind racing. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words like daggers in his throat. "I can't forget her." The Keeper tilted its head as if considering his response. Then, to Ethan's surprise, it stepped aside, gesturing toward an archway that had appeared in the far wall. "You have chosen well," it said. "The maze respects strength of will. Go, and face what lies ahead." Ethan didn't wait for further explanation. He sprinted through the archway, the whispers fading behind him. But as he emerged into the next realm, a chilling thought struck him. The maze hadn't asked for his sister's memory. It had taken something else, something he might not realize was missing until it was too late.